Factoring polynomials with more than 3 terms. If we're faced with factoring a polynomial that has more than 3 terms, this is going to be a much more difficult process, and there's no technique that's always going to work. So basically, we will have some techniques. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. We just have to try them. And I'm just going to present one technique here that we can use that will probably show up at some time during the semester that we can use to factor polynomials with more than 3 terms. And this is called factor by grouping. This technique does not always work. Even if a polynomial factors, there's no guarantee that this method will factor it for us. But there oftentimes will give us an opportunity to factor. It gives us something to try. So let's look at an example. So 4x cubed minus 12x squared minus 9x plus 27. So let's see how factor by grouping works. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take this polynomial. First off, we want to make sure that it's written in descending order, and this one is. So the highest degree term is first, the lowest degree term is last. And then what we want to do is we want to group it into 2 pieces. So here and here. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for common factors within each group. So that first group, we have a 4, we have a 12, so a 4 is a common factor there. We have an x cubed, we have an x squared. So for that one, we can factor out 4x squared. And then we're left with, in the first one, we took out the 4, so that's gone. We took out 2 of the x's, so we have 1 left. In the second term, we took out the 4. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. We still have that negative sign too, so that's going to be negative 3, and we took out the x squared, so that's the end of that one. So that first group, we factored out a 4x squared. We end up with 4x squared times x minus 3. In the second group, now one thing to keep in mind is if the next term is negative, we want to factor that out with it. So in this case, we want to factor out not just 9, we want to factor out negative 9. Okay, so if we take away the negative 9, all we have left is the x. And 27 divided by negative 9 is negative 3. And then for this one worked out well, and the factor by grouping is going to be able to continue because these 2 factors here ended up being the same. If those do not match each other, then we're done. There's nothing more we can do with this technique. Okay, but now since those are the same, we can factor that out, x minus 3, and then from the first term, we're left with 4x squared, and from the second term, we're left with minus 9. And so now we've managed to factor this into 2 polynomials. So 4x squared minus 9 and x minus 3. Also, though, because this was a polynomial that's higher than degree 2 to start with, we're going to want to look to see if any of the factors factor further. And in this case, 4x squared minus 9 is difference of squares, so that's going to factor as well. So 4x squared is 2x times 2x. And 9 is 3 times 3. So this is going to factor as 2x minus 3, 2x plus 3, and x minus 3. Sometimes the degree 2 term that comes out of that first step does not factor again, and that's fine. Then we're just left with the 2 factors. But sometimes it does, and usually what happens is if it does factor again, it's because it's difference of squares. And that's factor by grouping.